On Sunday, January 24th, the Migrant Women Coordinating Body held an educational entitled Migrant Women Struggle Here and Abroad. The educational included a public screening of Samjana, a film by Shahrazda Arshadi, and also included speakers from Gabriela, Justicia for Migrant Workers, Canadian HART, and the Afghan Iranian Youth Web.
I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about this project and the film that you will see, which is a very, very small snapshot of our experience with traveling in Nepal. Nadine was part of that team, and I'm looking at the impact of years of war on women and women's struggle. But from a totally different sort of angle and perspective, we wanted to see that actually how women organized and participated in building their dream of a socialist communist Nepal, not in the sort of a building the NGO and with the support of donor agencies, mainly from abroad, which in other contexts that I have worked on, very clearly we have to look at the role of NGOs as another arm of imperialist intervention and imperialist sort of expansion in most regions of the world. That doesn't mean that all women's NGOs that are working and struggling in different countries and different parts of the world are part of an imperialist sort of agenda, but we have to be very critical of the relationship between donor agencies and the work of NGOs, which is very interesting that Haiti right now is a very good example to look at. And I highly recommend that. I'm diverting, but I came across a wonderful book that I would like to bring to your attention, and that is Building Heaven Heaven Built in Hell, which is looking at the development agendas in time of war or destruction, which is also another sort of we can call it the violence of war. And so it is in that context that what you see is only one woman voice. And the idea is not that this is a documentary professionally done and you know, the merit of this 20 minutes that we will watch it is not based on the technique of a very good documentary. The merit of it is on the voice of the women and the message that we get from Samjana, who is the woman in this film. So let's watch that, and if there is anything after the movie that you want to ask myself or Nadine, that would be great. And I have 2 announcements that I will make those announcements after the movie.
And is one of the founding members of Migrant in Ontario, and newly founded Gabriela, which is a women's organization.
Our next speaker after that will be Rasheen, who's with us from the Afghan Iranian Youth Network. As a female born and raised in Iran, Rasheen has been exposed to what it's like to be regarded as a second-class citizen. Her exposures to the inequalities people face based on gender, race, and class have pulled her towards an interest in politics. She is currently a political science major at the University of Toronto. Her interests in social inequality got her involved with the Afghan Iranian Youth Network in 2009. Through the network, they aim to provide their readers with a new perspective, one other than presented by popular media, on current events concerning Iranian and Afghan people.
And the third speaker is Kate Shees, and she's here, and she's a member of Justicia for Migrant Workers. And most of her work is with women around issues with mental health, sexual health, and community building. She's a recent grad student at York University in psychology, and now she works as a counselor at a women's health clinic in downtown.
And our final speaker on the panel today will be Javini, who's here on behalf of Canadian HART to talk about the struggles Tamil women are facing in Sri Lanka. Canadian HART, which stands for the Canadian Humanitarian Appeal for Relief of Tamils, is a Canadian organization that has as its mission to highlight the humanitarian crisis and human rights violations in Sri Lanka to the world, and specifically to all levels of the Canadian society. So Cynthia, if you'd like to start our panel this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. And thank you for being here. As they said, I'm with Gabriela, which is a newly founded women's group in the Filipino community. And we are affiliated with Gabriela Philippines, which is an umbrella of women's organizations within the Philippines and all over the world now because of our migrant women in 190 countries all over the world. So I'll talk about the situation, current situation of our women, and then the current situation also of the women's movement in the Philippines. With the current government under the President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo regime, the condition of the Filipino women continues to decline. With 90 million people, 90% of the Philippine population is a ruled class comprised of workers and peasants, and half of them are women. Half of the population is in urban areas with no affordable shelter, but living in makeshift dwellings and informal settlements with no access to social services, inaccessible and low-quality health services, increasing rate of dropouts at all levels due to increasing rate of tuition fees in order to earn a living. The government's open-door policy to attract foreign investment has subjected the workers to labor flexibilization in factories involving production or assembly line of electronics, semiconductors, clothes and garment industry, wherein only 15% are regular workers and 80% of the workers are women. 60 million people are living below $2 a day, thus half of the population, or more than half of the population, is poor. Debt servicing remains to be the biggest budget allocation, accounting for at least 25% of the total budget of the government. When it comes to women's situation in the urban areas, they can be found in three major places now: urban areas and rural areas. In major cities like Manila, call centers is expected to bring in $5 billion from 2007 to 2010. The call center hub of Asia, which is the Philippines, due to the affordable quality of human resource and due to the strategic location of our country. Women account for 56% of employed agents in these centers, but there are a lot of health risks to the employees, since mostly they're night shift, which is the opposite of what they're servicing, which is North American countries. In the mining industry, it's expected to generate $7 billion until this year, 2010, but it only contributes to 0.32% of total employment, which cannot offset the destruction of human lives, property, livelihood, and it affects mostly the women and children in these rural areas. At least 60% of companies that have ventured in the Philippines, mining companies, are Canadian companies. For example, there's a Toronto Ventures Incorporated in Zamboanga. We have all over the Philippines what we call export processing zones, wherein women account for 80% of the workers. They're subjected to contractual positions, low salary, no benefits at all, no security of tenure, abuses, and of course a quota system. With the current government, that we have, and even in the past, there has been a notorious history of state-sponsored violation. With the President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, from 2001 until 2009, there have been 1,100 victims of extrajudicial killings, of which 125 of them are women. There are 200 victims of forced disappearances, and 30 are women victims. And with the election coming up in May 2010, we can expect that these politically motivated killings will increase even more.